The sky above the burning city crackled with the hum of alien engines. Blackened ash swirled in the air like the last remnants of humanity's defiance. Earth's last bastion, New Paris, had fallen. The streets, once vibrant and full of life, were now littered with twisted metal and the corpses of the last soldiers standing. Silence hung thick, oppressive, save for the deep, rhythmic pulse of the enemy ships hovering overhead. In the center of it all, Captain Elias Vale stood. His uniform was torn, blood seeping through his side, but he didn't falter. His chest heaved with each labored breath, but there was no fear in his eyes. There never was. The alien commander, Malarix, surveyed the scene from the cockpit of his warship, his cold gaze fixed on the lone human. He had seen humans cower, had heard their desperate pleas for mercy, but never this. This human, Vale, was different. Standing amidst the wreckage of his world, the captain didn't kneel, didn't beg. He only laughed. Malarix's brow furrowed. The laughter was unsettling, echoing across the void like the sound of a distant, mocking drum. He had ordered the humans exterminated, their resistance had been crushed. And yet, here this human stood, laughing as if it were the final joke of the universe. Vale's shoulders shook with each chuckle, his bloodied face contorted into a grin. There was something about the way he laughed that disturbed Malarix to his core. This was not the reaction of a broken man. This was a defiant soul. A soul that refused to yield. The commander's voice crackled through the comms, harsh and clipped. "Human! You've lost. Your world is ash. Why do you laugh?" Vale's laugh faltered for just a moment as he wiped blood from his lips. His voice was hoarse, but there was no tremor of fear. "You think you've won. But you have no idea who you're dealing with." Malarix's mandibles clicked in frustration. "You are the last. There is no one left. Your species is dead. You are dead." Vale's eyes, sharp and unyielding, met the alien's gaze. "You think you've broken us," he muttered, his voice almost a whisper, though the words were soaked with defiance. "But you've only awakened something worse." The aliens had underestimated humanity, thinking them weak, fragile. Malarix had assumed that once their ships descended, once the cities were destroyed, the humans would cower like any other conquered species. They had expected the desperation to break them, to make them surrender. Instead, this human had stood, unbroken, laughing at the destruction of his world. It unsettled Malarix. It made him question the strength of his own empire. "You've seen nothing," Vale said, a grin spreading across his face despite the blood that now stained his teeth. "You want to know why I laugh? Because this isn't the end. It's the beginning." Before Malarix could respond, the sky above the ruins of New Paris suddenly split open. A crackling hum reverberated through the air, a sound like thunder before the storm. The alien fleet stilled, their sensors buzzing with confusion. The commander's eyes darted around, searching for the source of the disturbance. In the distance, far beyond the smoldering horizon, something colossal emerged. A massive, gleaming silhouette, silhouetted against the broken sun. The dreadnoughts. The ships humanity had secretly built, hidden in the dark corners of space, waiting for the right moment. The hum grew louder, vibrating the ground beneath Malarix's feet. His heart skipped. The humans had planned. They had waited. And now, they were showing their true hand. Vale's laugh deepened, full of malice and unspoken promise. "This is far from over, Malarix. You've only just begun to lose." The alien commander's mind raced, his cold calculations faltering. He had underestimated humanity, he thought them defeated. But the dreadnoughts were here, their massive guns primed. The battle was far from finished. In the sky, the first volley of fire erupted. The dreadnoughts were no longer a secret. And Malarix realized, with a sinking certainty, that humanity's resilience wasn't just about surviving, it was about revenge. The air inside the alien vessel was thick, sterile. The hum of machines seemed to pulse from the walls, as if they were alive and watching. Captain Elias Vale stood in the center of a gleaming chamber, shackles clasped around his wrists. His eyes, however, remained unclouded, cold, as they met the eyes of his captors. They had thought they'd broken him when they tore through New Paris. They had thought they'd found his breaking point. But they hadn't. Malarix, the alien commander who had overseen the destruction of Earth's capital, paced before him. The heavy scent of ozone hung in the air as the commander's mandibles clicked in agitation. His deep, iridescent skin rippled with every movement, his emotions too alien to fully decipher, yet Vale saw the frustration in his eyes. The first crack in their confidence. "Tell me," Malarix growled, his voice a low, resonant hum. "What is it about you, human? What drives you to laugh in the face of annihilation? What could possibly be funny about your people's extinction?" Vale's lips twitched upward at the edges. He wasn't afraid. Not of Malarix, not of the invaders who had shattered his world. They had their warships, their superior technology, their numbers. But they did not have humanity's most dangerous weapon, resilience. And they had no idea how deep that well ran. "You've got it all wrong," Vale said, his voice hoarse but firm, a quiet strength in his words that made Malarix pause. "It's not about laughing at your victory. It's about laughing at your misunderstanding." Malarix's mandibles flared, his patience wearing thin. "Misunderstanding?" His tone shifted, now sharp with the weight of authority. "You dare mock the might of the Galactic Armada? You, whose planet has been reduced to rubble?" Vale didn't flinch. "No. I mock the arrogance. You think you've broken us. That you've wiped us off the map." His voice was low, dark. "But you've only made us stronger." Behind Vale's words, a tension surged like a distant storm. He wasn't just talking about himself. He was talking for every human who had stood against the alien onslaught, every soul who had fought back against the impossible. There was a weight in those words. A defiance that sent a ripple through the alien crew observing from the control room. Malarix's eyes narrowed, and he stepped closer to Vale, his towering form casting a shadow over the human. "Your people will never rise again," he said, the words heavy with finality. "There is no fight left in you." "You don't get it," Vale whispered. His gaze was steady, unbroken. "You never did." The commander clenched his fists, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating beneath the tension of the moment. For a brief moment, the room fell into silence. Malarix stared down at the human, his mind whirring. He had seen human fear before: weakness, desperation. But this wasn't fear. It was something else entirely. Something more dangerous. Then the door to the chamber opened, and the mood shifted. A sleek alien officer stepped inside, holding a device in one clawed hand. She said nothing, only extended the device to Malarix, her expression unreadable. He took it, his eyes still on Vale. The commander activated it, and a hologram flickered to life above the device. An image of the sky, dark and brooding, a distant star system alive with movement. Malarix's gaze sharpened as he studied the hologram. His mandibles tightened. "What is this?" "This," the officer said, her voice cold, "is a report from the outer sectors. The fleet is not responding. Our dreadnoughts, those we sent to crush the humans, are not answering our commands." For the first time, a hint of doubt flickered in Malarix's eyes. He spun toward the officer, his voice laced with urgency. "Explain yourself." "There are disturbances, Commander. Signs of unusual activity. The dreadnoughts are returning to their last known position, but they are moving under their own power. And the human ships, we have reports of human ships." Malarix's eyes widened. "No. It cannot be. We destroyed them. We saw them burn." Vale's lips curled into a grin. "You didn't destroy us, Malarix. You only woke us up." The officer's voice trembled with disbelief. "Impossible." Vale's gaze hardened. "You underestimated us. Now you'll see the price of that mistake." Malarix spun back toward Vale, fury now bubbling beneath the surface. His voice came out in a growl. "What is this? What's happening?" Vale leaned forward, his voice a venomous whisper. We've been waiting. 4 years. Hidden. Preparing. And now, it's time. The tension snapped in the air as Malarix turned back to the hologram, his mind reeling. The implications were undeniable. The war was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The command center of the alien ship buzzed with urgency. The atmosphere was thick, a fever pitch of frantic officers and flashing holograms, all scrambling to make sense of the inexplicable. Malarix stood at the center, his claws gripping the edge of a console as the reports continued to flood in. His mind raced, heart pounding with the realization that the human resistance he had dismissed as a dying embers was not only alive, but was about to ignite a fire they could not control. Commander, the officer's voice was tight with distress. The dreadnoughts, they're assembling. They've activated their main drives. They're heading toward Earth. Malarix's jaw clenched. Impossible. He had personally supervised the decimation of every human stronghold. Their fleets were gone. The last remnants of the Earthlings were crushed under the might of the Galactic Armada. And yet, here they were, defying all logic, all expectations. What did you say? Malarix's voice was dangerously quiet, too quiet, as he turned to face the officer. His eyes narrowed to slits. How is this possible? I don't know, Commander. We've lost contact with the forces stationed at the Outer Rim. The ships are, the officer's voice trailed off, his words lost as the central monitor flared to life. A massive vessel, unmistakable in its design, cut through the space around Earth. The human flagship. The dreadnoughts. They had been hidden. For how long, no one knew. But the fleet was real, and it was coming back to Earth's defense. Malarix straightened, his once unshakable confidence now fractured. There had been whispers among the higher-ups, rumors of a human weapon that was too dangerous to exist. But no one had truly believed it. No one except Elias Vale. The captain's laughter from days before still echoed in Malarix's mind, a sound that sent a chill through his otherwise controlled demeanor. Why had Vale laughed? It wasn't a man who had given up. It was a man who knew something the aliens could never have anticipated. Malarix's clawed hand clenched into a fist. The humans weren't just surviving. They were evolving, adapting. They were rising from the ashes, and they were not going to go quietly. Vale sat in his cell, back against the cold metal wall, his wrists still shackled. But now, there was a shift in him. An energy that had not been present before. His laughter had been more than a show of defiance, it had been a signal. A message to his people. We are not finished. His mind raced as he replayed the moments before the dreadnoughts had come alive. They had built them in secret, hidden in the depths of space. It had taken years, decades even, but now they were ready. The humans had built an armada that no one had counted on, and it would be the key to pushing back the invaders. And Vale, he had known all along. He had known that humanity would rise again. There was power in their unity, in their ability to adapt and overcome. The aliens had underestimated them. A low hum filled the air, and Vale's eyes snapped to the corner of the room. A small vent near the ceiling hissed open, and from it descended a small, sleek device. A communicator. Vale's heart pounded in his chest. The voice that came through the device was familiar. It was hushed, crackling with static but still unmistakable. Captain Vale, the voice said. The dreadnoughts are on their way. The fleet is ready. You are the signal. It's time to finish what we started. Vale smiled, a fierce, knowing grin. He had known they would come. The humans were never done. Not as long as one soul was left standing. The aliens had thought their victory was assured. They thought they had crushed the last of humanity. But they had made one mistake. They had forgotten what humans were capable of when cornered. They had underestimated their will. I'm ready, Vale said quietly, his voice steady despite the chaos that surrounded him. Release me. In the command center, Malarix paced restlessly, Every report, every communication only deepened his dread. The humans were not merely fighting back, they were organizing, coordinating, preparing. The dreadnoughts had always been their trump card, but he hadn't believed they'd actually managed to bring them online. Not this quickly. Not after everything they had endured. And yet, here they were, silently coming for him. But what disturbed Malarix the most was Vale. The human had been unlike any enemy he had encountered. The resilience, the laughter, the defiance, it was all part of something greater, something Malarix couldn't understand. Suddenly, a new message appeared on the main screen. It was a single phrase, one that froze the blood in Malarix's veins. The dreadnoughts are coming home. The room fell silent. Malarix's heart clenched. The humans had not only survived, they were bringing their war back to the stars. And this time, the invaders would feel the full force of Earth's wrath. The hull of the human flagship, the Aegis, glinted like a shard of ice in the cold void of space. It was a weapon, a monstrous creation of human ingenuity, a product of years of defiance. As it powered through the stars, a fleet of dreadnoughts followed in its wake, their massive forms casting a shadow over the alien forces who had once believed Earth's last hope was but a fleeting memory. Inside the control room, Captain Elias Vale stood before the viewport, his eyes locked on the approaching enemy fleet. His breathing was steady, measured, yet beneath the calm exterior, a storm of emotions raged. This moment, the moment humanity had been waiting for, was finally upon them. "Sir," a voice interrupted his thoughts. Lieutenant Davina Morrow, her sharp features reflecting the soft glow of the console, looked up at him. "The Armada's main fleet is in range. We're preparing to engage." Vale nodded, his hand gripping the rail at his side. "We've been waiting for this. No turning back now." Morrow's gaze flicked to the fleet on the monitors. Her eyes were hard, but there was a flicker of something else there, fear. They all felt it, the weight of the task ahead. But they had no choice. This was the moment to reclaim their home. "Do you think we can win?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, as if speaking it aloud might make it more real. Vale turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "We don't need to win," he said. "We just need to remind them who we are." His words lingered in the air, heavy with the unspoken truth. The dreadnoughts were not just ships, they were symbols of humanity's unyielding will. The aliens had thought they had crushed them. But now, humanity was back. And the cost of their underestimation would be measured in fire. Malarix stood in the heart of the alien command ship, his eyes glued to the holographic display that showed the advancing human fleet. The sight made his stomach tighten. The humans were far more organized than he had anticipated, their ships forming a cohesive, impenetrable front. The dreadnoughts, those monstrous behemoths, were closing in, their weapons primed and ready. "This can't be," Malarix muttered under his breath. How could they have hidden this from us? He had been so sure. The entire alien fleet had been mobilized to annihilate Earth. He had witnessed the destruction with his own eyes. And yet, here they were. The human fleet was back, and they were coming for him. "Commander," one of his officers said, voice trembling, "they've launched their first strike. We're in their firing range." Malarix's sharp mandibles clicked together. His mind was racing. He had prepared for this. He had planned for this. And yet, nothing in his calculations had prepared him for the sheer force of human defiance. They had become something more than what he'd imagined. More than just a nuisance. "Prepare the fleet," Malarix ordered, his voice ice-cold despite the knot of panic building in his chest. "We must break their lines. Now." The battle erupted like a storm. The dreadnoughts unleashed their first salvo, their guns ripping through the black void with a force that shook the stars themselves. The alien ships, massive and imposing, scattered in an attempt to avoid the barrage. But the humans were relentless. Every shot from the dreadnoughts found its mark, each explosion a testament to humanity's ingenuity and tenacity. Vale stood at the center of the command room, watching as the battle unfolded. His heart raced, but his mind was clear. This was what they had trained for. This was what they had fought for. The galaxy would learn what it meant to challenge humanity. Target their lead ship, Vale ordered, his voice steady. Focus everything on breaking their command center. Morrow moved swiftly, her fingers dancing across the controls. Locked on. Ready when you are, sir. Vale's eyes flicked to the viewport, where the alien flagship loomed like a beast in the dark. He took a breath. Fire. The Aegis roared as its weapons came to life. A concentrated beam of energy shot from its core, slicing through the enemy flagship's shields and into its hull. The explosion was deafening, a blinding flash that lit the battlefield with the fury of 1,000 suns. For a moment, the universe held its breath. Then, Malarix's voice broke through the silence, a guttural growl of disbelief. What are they? The alien fleet was reeling. The shock of the attack reverberated through their lines, their coordination crumbling under the onslaught. For the first time since the beginning of the war, the alien forces hesitated. Vale's eyes narrowed. This was the opening they needed. The battle wasn't just about firepower. It was about sending a message. One that would echo through the stars long after the smoke cleared. We'll show them what humanity is capable of, Vale muttered, his lips curling into a grim smile. Let them fear us.